Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I am a voice teacher. Today I will be reacting to and analyzing YUNGBLUD and Halsey covering Death Cab for Cutie's I Will Follow You Into the Dark. I will follow you into the dark. Where do you put this? I don't know. You know the song. Oh, I didn't know he played. I like that.
Love of mine, someday you will die, and I'll be close behind to follow you into the...
So far it's all very low chest voice notes, but he's making them quite breathy. If he maintains that same breathy tone, it's gonna be difficult to get to higher notes, to start bridging up into his higher register. It probably will start sounding strained. So I bet that we will see him change that tone or get a very strained tone when he goes to some higher notes, like up an octave from there.
No blinding light.
It's a cool tone for the lower part though.
Just our hands clasped so tight, waiting for the hint of a spark.
So I'm not as big on saying that people need to be in a certain position to sing on posture, but it's a good thing to play around with, and if we could adjust the mic so that he wasn't having to be bent over, that could just be an interesting thing to experiment with. But that said, good singers can sing in many different positions, but if it becomes habitual to lock ourselves into certain positions, that's where it's worth looking into, because all of these muscles that hold up your head, a lot of them connect to your larynx, and when those muscles are tense in other ways, sometimes it affects your larynx, which affects your vocal folds, which affects just everything, and it starts feeling worse. With what he's doing right now, it's probably not a big deal, but it's still worth looking into.
If heaven and hell decide.
Yeah, see, as soon as he starts going to any sort of higher note, we lose a little bit of that breathy tone. It becomes a much more clear sound. It's just a reality of singing it's really difficult to sing in those higher registers with any sort of volume while maintaining that breathy tone.
That they both are satisfied. Illuminate the night.
I love that you can hear so much of his accent coming through. I am not affiliated with speech level singing, but a lot of my teachers were affiliated with speech level singing, and it's always stuck to me just the name of that organization, Speech Level. And the reason that we do this is because so many singers kind of over modify their vowels from the way that they would use their vowels for speech. And with pop music, for most of what you do, if we can get the vowels closer to how you would use them for speech, it will serve you. When we get up into bridge areas, a lot of times people will over-modify and go ah, rather than saying like ah or something. And so by just bringing it closer to speech, ah, that solves a lot of that problem. It's just a good rule of thumb. Like, see if you can pronounce things the way you would for speech while you're singing, and see if that makes anything feel better. If there are still sections that feel terrible, then maybe we need to adjust other vowels, but vowel is everything. Vowel is so freaking important. And also, him being from the UK, I just think that most UK accents are good for singing. So if you are blessed with that, bring it out.
On their vacancy signs, if there's no one beside you when your soul embarks.
Okay, so even though his head is all the way forward, his chest is still open. There are some good postural things. I sing a lot. I just live a lot of my life with my head forward, and it's fine. Would my life be better if I worked on making this a little bit more natural? Sure. Sure it would, but you're capable to do it in other ways.
You into the dark.
Catholic school as vicious as Roman road. I
got my knuckles bruised by a lady in black.
Her jaw confuses me, like, just flat out. I'm gonna try not to talk about it too much because it will dominate it, because I have a fixation on jaws, and when they move in as clicky of a way as what she does, and as it's not my favorite thing. I think that it also just tends to add extra tension into your instrument. We end up getting more of a strange sound with most people when they overuse their jaw like that. That said, her vowels, like, mostly like how she would speak them, kind of, except that I don't know what her spoken voice sounds like enough, and if I was working with her, I would obviously start by talking to her. A big part of talking to her would be to be like, cool, how do you use your voice when you're speaking? How does that change when we switch over to singing? If it is more similar than dissimilar, we're probably in a decent place to start, because as I said, I think that a lot of problems go away if we can bring your patterns closer to your speech. However, if it feels like it's something that she's just totally putting on, like this singing voice versus this speaking voice, then we need to start asking, okay, are the things that you're doing with your singing voice helping you? I don't think that she speaks with as much weird jaw stuff as she sings with, but it's possible that she does. She has such an interesting sound. It sounds kind of like she's bringing her larynx up a little bit on purpose, which makes it sound a little bit like a baby voice, kind of. It just is a shallower tone. She's not opening her mouth vertically too much yet. There were a few times when we saw the jaw get involved that the mouth did open vertically, and we got some of that space, which gave it a more open sound, obviously, but she's not singing high enough that it needs to be like all huge mouth all the time. That's not a really big deal. The only things that really pop out to me are the jaw and the fact that so much of what she does has that breathy tone. Breathiness isn't an issue always. It's just that when someone uses it as much as these artists do, it's like the voice teacher's responsibility to make sure that they don't have to do it breathy, that they are capable of doing it in a more clear way, because that's just gonna save their voices. Like, if you're singing it with a super, super breathy time all the time, super breathy tone all the time, it wears you out. These bigger muscles start thinking that they need to help with resisting the air rather than letting the vocal folds resist the air, and it starts adding tension, it dries out the vocal folds. It's just not a good time. It's probably not like it's still the main thing that I'd probably listen for if I was having a session with either of these singers, but she's proven that she can go into that less breathy tone sometimes, and so at that point, we just need to make sure that she's consciously moving back and forth between them and not introducing extra weird tension when she's singing breathy or when she's singing clear. It's basically get the voice as boring as possible while you're doing exercises, while you're doing warm-ups, so that you can deviate from this boring, easy place to start adding in weird stylistic things. But at least you know where that most efficient, most repeatable place is in your voice.
I held my tongue as she told me, son, fear is the heart of love.
Yeah, that's part of her style, though, is she'll close it early, so she almost is adding diphthongs into everything that she does. As I told you, son. It's a thing that she's doing that is helping her style, and a lot of people love Halsey because of how much style she has. Is it going to serve her forever? I don't know. Maybe. Is it worth imitating? Probably not.
So I never went back. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, and I'll follow you.
That was really lovely. I like how he started by letting her stay in the lead, which obviously she has the melody through the entire section and he's singing harmony with it, but he starts a lot more quiet and then he kind of grows into this other part where even though he's singing a harmony, he kind of takes over the main focus at that section, and then he fades back a little bit more, all the time listening to her and automatically like just letting what he's hearing guide what he's doing with his voice, because it's not like he's saying, okay, I'm going to do this. No, he's getting that auditory information and it's automatically resulting in him tuning to that with his voice. And he sounds really good. Like, he's got a great ear. Dude is talented. I haven't listened to him very much, but I'm impressed.
Dark. You into the dark.
And they like each other.
You and me, we've seen everything to see, from Bangkok to Cal.
This is actually one of the better performances I've seen from her. I haven't seen a ton of her, but like her voice sounds not pressed, and that's a big thing. I mean, it's probably ultra quiet, the sounds that she's making, and when you're singing as quiet as she is, you can get away with a lot more weirdness. You see, her mic is this far from her face. You don't need to make big sounds when you're doing this, and it's very possible that she, even when she makes the sounds that we perceive as big, it's super quiet, because tone is different from volume. And if you have independent control over volume, over tone, over pitch, over rhythm, over all of these different elements, then you can do weird things like this where it sounds more intense than it probably is and feels. When you're doing weird sounds like this, you have to make sure that it's repeatable, because when you are a superstar and you have to tour a lot and you're doing hundreds of performances a year, you can't be wearing yourself out every time that you do that, because even people who recover very quickly, like, it's just gonna add up. All of that tension, all of the bad stuff that happens adds up, and it takes a toll on you, and by the end of your tour, you're not able to make the same sounds as you were at the beginning. So one strategy to mitigate that is just reduce the pressure. Sometimes it seems like she's adding a little bit of pressure, but it could be that she's just adjusting the vowel a little bit to make it sound like there's pressure, and there's actually not a ton of tension. But again, those are the things that I think are worth asking when you're at that high level is, am I adding weird tension? Am I adding weird pressure? Am I able to sing these sounds for hours every single day? And if any of those come back like in a worrying way, like, yeah, I'm adding this tension. Cool, work on that. There's no shame in working on that when you're as high a level of performer as these people are. It's just, you have to always be asking yourself those questions and learning different sounds to kind of balance out these other ones, just to make sure that you have a closet with as many clothes as you can in terms of your sound. It's like if you have just one dress and that dress is gorgeous and you wear it all the time, it's like, cool. But if you have a bunch of different clothes, you can do more things. You can go play baseball, and it's going to be hard to do that in your really nice dress. It's just good to learn a bunch of different things, and I'm sure that these singers can do other things outside of their niche. It's just that that's the kind of stuff that I would look for with them.
And the soles of your shoes are all worn down. The time for
They both did that diphthong at the same, the time for sleep, and because they did it at the same time, it actually sounded really cool together.
there's nothing to cry about, 'cause we're all
Yeah, they're listening very well to each other.
in the blackest of the room.
So it's a B flat. It's probably a little bit heavier of a belt than I would love, and again, you see the jaw engage, and when you see B flat starts getting much louder, she pulled away from the mic because she didn't want it to blow out, which is fine, but it's just more information, more clues. You gotta ask yourself, is that sustainable? At a B flat, you probably can get away with it quite a bit, but it's gonna be harder to pull that sound up higher. Again, please don't engage your jaw as much as she is engaging her jaw, or try to do it because it looks cool. If she might be getting away with it just fine, you probably won't.
If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied.
She uses a lot of that vocal fry onset, which I think is really nice because it helps encourage a less pressured sound in the following vowel. So, if heaven and hell decide, like using that little it's hard to squeeze while you're using that kind of onset. So I think it's a good sign, and it's also helping her go between that really breathy sound and a slightly more clear sound. And it just sounds emotional and vulnerable, where using those sounds right after she goes to that bigger, beltier, almost yellier sound, like it just is a huge distance in terms of dynamics, and having as big of a dynamic range as you can is nice.
Illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. I'll follow you into the dark.
Yeah, they use a lot of those diphthongs and kind of closing to vowels or to consonants earlier than we would with more traditional voice training or classical music or musical theater or even like traditional pop music. And whether it was her that brought this in, like she made it really, really big for sure, but people have been doing this for a decade now, where it's that good, good, good for the word good. Dark, dark, doing all of those little things. It's part of their style. It's interesting. I've had quite a few younger female students come in, and when they sing songs by any of these artists, they started imitating these things. And it took a little bit for me to start hearing, like, what were they doing? But they're just naturally imitating this style. And so with a lot of them, just to make sure that they have as varied of a technique as is possible and that they aren't locked into one thing, like we have to really work on more legato sounds and legato vowels. So it's like singing mostly on that first vowel rather than closing it at the end. Basically, like, you'd never hear Whitney Houston do something like this. Maybe if Whitney was around right now and she was a 26-year-old, maybe she would do that kind of stuff because it's immensely popular, but that's one of the interesting things that I've seen change in pop music over the last 20 years. Okay, if they're a plant, like, that's fine, but it does seem like they genuinely like each other, and so that's cool. They're listening to each other extraordinarily well. They're matching each other well. How much they practice this, I don't know. It's hard to get to a point where things sound spontaneous, and it sounds like they're being spontaneous, even though it's, like, perfectly rehearsed. And to me, that's a real awesome thing, and they're doing that really well. Are there things that I would change? No? I mean, like, with the warm-ups, sure, I'd want to make sure that they're capable of doing everything and that their voice feels amazing, and I feel like by giving them great warm-ups, they would hold on to that kind of sensation when they're going to sing. But in terms of this final performance, like, it's great. It's awesome. It's well thought out. They sound really good together. They're listening to each other super well. Is it my favorite style? Probably not, but that doesn't matter because this has 7 million views. And at one point, it's like singing becomes this aesthetic preference. And even the best voice teachers, they have these aesthetics that are built into how they teach. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that as voice teachers so that we can say, what do we need to keep from this style that is working well for them? What is not serving them well? Let's try to pull away those things that aren't serving them well while maintaining the things that are working for them well stylistically. Because whenever you turn on the radio and a Halsey song is on, you know it's Halsey. You just do. She's got a really recognizable voice, and that is a massive asset. That if I took that away as a voice teacher, I should be fired. Absolutely. But do I think that she could do it in a more balanced way? Sometimes. Absolutely sometimes. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below, share this video with your friends, and go check out all the links in my description. I've got so many links. They're the best links. You've never seen a collection of links like my collection of links.